Teresa had always believed that hospitals were sacred places, where life and death danced together in fragile silence. After 15 years of nursing experience, she thought nothing could shake her resolve. But that belief shattered the very moment she stepped into Starlight Medical Center, California. The air was colder than usual, and the long white hallways felt strangely hollow, as though they carried whispers from a forgotten time. On her very first day, the doctors greeted her warmly, but behind their smiles lingered something unspoken, something they chose not to tell her. Room 405. That number meant nothing to Teresa then. She had no idea that soon it would haunt her dreams and make her question everything she thought she knew about life, death, and the restless souls trapped in between. That night, as she walked past the dimly lit corridor, she felt a sudden chill crawl down her spine. A janitor, his eyes tired and voice trembling, warned her softly, "Madam, never go near room 405. Strange things happen there. Doors slam on their own. Shadows move without bodies, and objects vanish into thin air." Teresa chuckled nervously, brushing it off as superstition. But deep inside, unease was already taking root. The second day arrived faster than Teresa expected. She had been assigned to the night shift, the kind of shift that always carried whispers of unease in hospitals. The corridors were emptier, the machines hummed louder, and every creak of the old building echoed like a cry in the silence. That night, she noticed that room 405 was unoccupied. For a moment, she recalled the janitor's warning, but her duties quickly distracted her as several new patients were brought in. One elderly man's condition worsened, and the only available room was 405. Against her better judgment, Teresa wheeled the patient inside. The moment she stepped out, the heavy, wooden door slammed shut with a bang that reverberated down the hallway. Teresa froze. Her rational mind told her it must have been the wind or a faulty hinge, but deep inside, she knew something was wrong. Later, when she entered to check on the patient, the man looked pale, his eyes wide with terror. He whispered shakily, "Nurse, someone else was here." She wore a torn, dirty uniform. She stood by the bed, watching me. Before Teresa could reply, the lights flickered violently, and a cold gust swept across the room. Teresa tried to calm the terrified patient, assuring him that stress and medication might have caused hallucinations. But her own hands were trembling as she prepared an injection to stabilize him. She filled the syringe, checked the dosage twice, and pressed the needle gently into his arm. When she placed the empty syringe on the side table, she turned for just a second to adjust the foreline, but when her eyes returned, the syringe was gone, completely vanished. Her breath caught in her throat. She scanned the floor, the bed, even under the table, but it was nowhere. The patient's voice broke the silence. "She took it. She was standing right behind you." Teresa spun around, her pulse racing, but the room was empty. Only the faint flicker of the fluorescent lights painted eerie shadows on the walls. At that moment, the door creaked shut by itself again, and the temperature in the room dropped sharply. Teresa felt an invisible weight pressing on her chest, as if unseen eyes were watching her every move. For the first time in 15 years, she questioned whether she was truly safe in her own hospital. The patient's breathing grew shallow, and Teresa felt her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. She tried to focus on his vitals, but the room seemed to close in around her. The air turned heavy, almost suffocating. Suddenly, the overhead light flickered once, twice, and then dimmed to a sickly glow. Out of the corner of her eye, Teresa saw something that didn't belong there. A figure stood in the far corner of the room, half hidden in darkness. Its outline was unmistakably feminine, dressed in an old, tattered nurse's uniform. The fabric looked stained, torn, as if dragged through years of decay. Teresa froze. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to move. The figure didn't approach, simply watched, its head tilted unnaturally, like a predator studying its prey. The patient began to whimper, pointing a trembling hand toward the corner. "She's here. Please, make her go away." Before Teresa could respond, the fluorescent light above buzzed violently and burst with a sharp crack. Glass rained down, and in the brief darkness that followed, Teresa swore she felt icy fingers brush against her arm. Teresa's heart pounded as shards of glass crunched under her shoes. The room was cloaked in a tense silence, broken only by the ragged breaths of the patient. Gathering courage, she whispered to herself, "There's nothing here. It's only my imagination." But then she felt it. A cold breath grazed the back of her neck, so chilling it made her skin prickle. Slowly, very slowly, she turned her head, but no one was behind her. The door was closed, the corner empty. And yet, her body screamed that someone was standing, just inches away. Suddenly, a voice, raspy and broken, hissed into her ear. "Why are you in my room?" Teresa staggered back, nearly colliding with the patient's bed. The old man clutched her wrist in terror, his lips trembling. "She's right beside you, don't you see her?" The shadows on the wall began to stretch unnaturally, twisting into shapes that resembled hands reaching out. The temperature plummeted further, and the heart monitor beside the patient spiked wildly, as though reacting to something invisible in the room. For the first time, Teresa's courage cracked. This was no illusion. Something truly haunted. Room 405. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the very walls were closing in on Teresa. She could barely breathe. The patient whimpered, covering his face with trembling hands. The shadows on the wall quivered, and then they began to merge into one shape. Slowly, from the darkness of the corner, she emerged. The ghostly nurse. Her figure stepped into the pale, light-hatted uniform, hanging loosely. Her skin bruised and gray, lips torn as though she had bitten them in rage. But it was her eyes that froze Teresa's blood. Hollow, black pits that reflected nothing human. The ghost tilted her head, studying Teresa like a stranger trespassing in sacred ground. Then, in a chilling voice that echoed unnaturally around the room, she spoke. "You don't belong here. This is my ward. These patients are mine." The overhead machines crackled, alarms blaring without reason. The patient screamed, his voice strangled in terror. Teresa stumbled back against the wall, her legs weak, her breath shaking. The ghostly nurse raised a decayed, trembling finger and pointed directly at Teresa. "Leave, or stay forever." Teresa's instincts screamed run. Without thinking, she darted toward the door. Her hands fumbled at the handle, twisting it desperately. But it wouldn't move. The heavy wooden door refused to open, as though some invisible force was holding it shut. Behind her, the patient wailed in panic, his voice echoing like a lost child's cry. The monitors around him spiked wildly, then flatlined for a second, only to start again as if something unseen was playing with his life. "Let me out," Teresa shouted, slamming her fists against the door. Each bang seemed to vanish into the walls, swallowed by an unnatural silence. And then she heard it, the sound of soft footsteps slowly approaching behind her. Cold dread seeped into her bones. She turned her head ever so slightly, and there she was, the ghost nurse, now only a few feet away. Her crooked smile stretched unnaturally wide, revealing cracked teeth. The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into strobing shadows. Teresa pulled at the handle one last time, but instead of opening, the door rattled shut, tighter sealing her inside. A whisper slithered into her ear. "No one leaves my room." Teresa pressed her back against the cold wall, her breath shallow and uneven. The patient was sobbing now, whispering prayers under his breath. She wanted to comfort him, but her own terror was swallowing her whole. Then, she felt it. The wall against her spine pulsed. It wasn't solid anymore. It moved, like flesh beneath her touch. She stumbled forward in horror, staring at the white paint as it rippled slightly, veins of shadow crawling under the surface. And then came the sound. A faint knocking, like fingernails scratching from the inside of the walls. "Help me." The voice was muffled, distant, but it came from within the wall. Teresa's eyes widened as another voice joined. Then another, until the entire room echoed with whispers, screams, and sobs from souls trapped in the plaster. The patient clutched his chest, gasping. They're inside, all of them buried. In here with her. Teresa covered her ears, but it was useless. The walls throbbed with agony, a chorus of the damned. And in the middle of it all, the ghostly nurse smiled wider, her hollow eyes fixed on Teresa. "You can't escape. The walls already know your name." Teresa could no longer bear the voices. She rushed toward the door again, yanking it with all her strength. This time it opened. Relief surged through her chest as she stumbled into the corridor. But something was wrong. The hallway stretched unnaturally long, the fluorescent lights above buzzing and flickering like dying fireflies. She turned left only to find another hallway, identical to the first dot. Her heart dropped. She ran, passing door after door, each marked 405. Every handle she pulled led only to another version of the same cursed room. Behind her, the sound of wheels squeaked. Slowly, deliberately, she turned her head and froze. Down the endless corridor, a hospital gurney was rolling by itself. On it lay a shrouded figure, covered in a blood-stained sheet. The sheet twitched, something alive beneath it. "No," Teresa whispered, Backing away, the lights above blinked out, plunging her into suffocating darkness. And in that silence, she heard it again, the rasping voice of the ghost nurse, echoing from everywhere at once. "You can run all night, but you will always return to me." Teresa's legs gave way beneath her as she stumbled into yet another door, labeled 405. She no longer knew if she was running forward or in circles. The air inside was thick, heavy with the smell of rust and something metallic blood. The lights flared, then dimmed, and suddenly the room was no longer empty. Figures appeared, blurred, ghostly outlines of doctors, nurses, and orderlies. They surrounded a woman in a nurse's uniform, shouting angrily. Teresa pressed her back to the wall, horrified, realizing what she was seeing wasn't real. It was a memory. The woman screamed, fighting back, her voice shrill with fury. One of the orderlies shoved her violently. She fell, striking her head against the metal bedframe. Blood sprayed, her cries silenced in an instant. Teresa gasped, tears burning her eyes. She was watching the violent death of the nurse, the very spirit now haunting room 405. But the horror wasn't over. Slowly, the ghostly figures turned their heads toward Teresa, though she wasn't part of their world. One by one, they whispered in unison, "Now you've seen it. Now you can never leave." The dead nurse's blood-soaked hand twitched, then, lifted, pointing directly at her. Teresa tore herself away from the ghastly vision, stumbling blindly toward the door. This time, it opened, but the world outside was no longer the hospital she knew. The bright white corridors had transformed into something grotesque. The walls were cracked, peeling, and stained with dark streaks that looked like dried blood. The smell of rot and decay choked the air. Lights flickered, revealing broken stretchers, overturned wheelchairs, and abandoned medical charts littering the floor. Most horrifying of all, the beds lining the hallways were filled. Bodies lay under soiled sheets, motionless. Some twitched, slightly, their faces hidden, as though fighting an eternal, unseen torment. Teresa's breath quickened. She staggered forward, whispering, "This isn't real. It's not real." But then one of the covered figures slowly sat up. The sheet slipped, revealing a corpse with sunken eyes and a gaping mouth, its jaw unhinged in a silent scream. It raised its hand toward her, bony fingers trembling. From all directions, whispers rose again, hundreds of voices chanting in unison, "Stay with us! Stay with us!" The corridor stretched endlessly, and at the far end stood the ghostly nurse, waiting. The ghost nurse at the far end of the corridor lifted her hand, and Teresa felt an invisible force wrap around her body. She screamed as her feet scraped across the filthy floor, dragging her unwillingly toward the morgue. The heavy metal doors creaked open on their own. Inside, the morgue was colder than ice, a suffocating chill that sank into her bones. Rows of steel drawers lined the walls, each large enough to hold a body. The silence was unbearably until it broke. Clang! One drawer slid open with a metallic screech. Inside lay a corpse, pale and stiff, its eyes snapping open to glare at her. Then another drawer slid open. And another. Soon, every drawer in the morgue was moving, each revealing a corpse in varying states of decay. Some had stitched chests, some had shattered skulls, some still wore hospital gowns, stained with dried blood, and all of them were turning their hollow gazes toward Teresa. The ghost nurse's voice echoed through the chamber. "This is where you belong now, among those who never leave." One corpse raised its hand and pointed at an empty drawer. Its lid slid open, slowly waiting for her. Teresa shook her head violently, stumbling backward as the empty morgue drawer slid open with a piercing metallic groan. The corpses around her began shifting, their brittle bones creaking as they reached out with stiff, trembling arms. "No, no, I'm not one of you," Teresa screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the echoing chamber. The ghost nurse stepped forward, her decayed face twisted in a cruel smile. Her uniform was torn, blood-stained, and her hollow eyes locked on Teresa's. "You don't have a choice. The hospital has chosen you. Room 405 never lets its prey go." Suddenly, the corpses moved in unison. Cold, dead hands gripped Teresa's arms and legs, pulling her toward the open drawer. She kicked, scratched, and struggled, her nails clawing against the metal floor, leaving desperate marks. Her heart thundered as she was dragged closer. The drawer yawned like a grave, dark and endless. Teresa cried out, tears streaming down her face. "Please, let me go." The ghost nurse bent down beside her, whispering in her ear with a chilling hiss, "Once you lie inside, you'll never rise again." The corpses pulled harder, her body now halfway into the drawer. Teresa screamed until her throat burned as the corpses dragged her fully into the morgue drawer. The cold darkness swallowed her, and the drawer slammed shut with a deafening clang. Silence. She lay there, unable to breathe, her body trembling violently. Then, suddenly light pierced through her eyelids. She gasped and opened her eyes. She was no longer in the drawer. She was standing in the bright lobby of Starlight Medical Center, her very first day again. Doctors walked by. Nurses smiled politely, and the receptionist handed her a clipboard. Her heart froze. "No, this can't be real," she whispered. But everything was exactly as it had been. Her ID badge read "New Staff, Nurse Teresa." The same friendly doctor walked up to her and said, "Welcome to Starlight, Nurse Teresa. You'll be in charge of patients today in room 405. Her clipboard slipped from her shaking hands. She looked around desperately, but no one seemed to notice her panic. It was all repeating. The hospital, the ghost, room 405. And in the reflection of the glass door, she saw it, the ghost nurse, standing right behind her, smiling. Teresa tried to calm her racing heart as she clutched the clipboard with trembling hands. Not again, she thought. This time, she would avoid room 405 no matter what. She slipped away, hiding in another wing of the hospital, pretending to check patients who weren't even on her list. Hours passed, and she dared to believe she had escaped the curse. But, as evening fell, she was called to the nurse's station. The head doctor looked sternly at her. "Nurse Teresa, one of our patients has been moved to room 405. You are assigned to him immediately." Her stomach dropped. Her blood ran cold. No matter how she tried to run, fate dragged her back. She refused. She begged, but the staff around her stared in confusion. To them, room 405 was just another ward. They didn't see the terror in her eyes. The lights flickered above her. A chill swept through the corridor. And then she saw her, the ghost nurse, standing at the far end, pointing toward room 405. Teresa screamed and ran, but with every turn of the corridor, she always ended up in front of the same door. Room 405. Teresa's hand shook as she stood before the cursed door of room 405. Her legs felt like stone. But the ghost nurse's stare from the end of the corridor left her no choice. With trembling fingers, she pushed the door open. The hinges creaked like a scream. The room was dim, lit only by a weak fluorescent bulb flickering above. The bed in the center was occupied. Someone was lying there under the white sheet. Her heart pounded. Slowly, she walked closer, her steps echoing unnaturally loud. With a shaking hand, she pulled the sheet back and froze. It was her. Her own lifeless body lay on the bed, eyes wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling. The skin was pale, the lips bluish, as though she had been dead for hours. Teresa stumbled back, gasping. "No, this isn't real. It can't be." From the corner of the room, the ghost nurse stepped forward, whispering in a hollow voice, "You were always meant to stay here. You are one of us now." The lights buzzed violently, the door slammed shut behind her, and the reflection of her dead body began to twitch. Teresa's scream caught in her throat, as her dead body on the bed began to twitch violently. Its fingers curled, its chest rose with a sickening gasp, and then its head turned toward her with a cracking sound. Those lifeless eyes, now glowing faintly white, locked onto her. "No," Teresa whispered, backing away until her back hit the wall. The corpse sat up slowly, bones cracking, lips stretching into a horrifying grin. It slid off the bed, bare feet slapping against the cold floor, and began walking toward her. "I'm you," the dead version rasped, voice distorted like many voices speaking at once. Teresa tried to reach for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The ghost nurse was blocking the way, smiling as though she was enjoying the show. The corpse lunged forward, grabbing Teresa's wrist with icy strength. She felt her energy draining instantly, her vision blurring. Her double pulled closer, its face inches away, and whispered, "Only one of us can live, and it won't be you." The lights exploded, plunging the room into darkness. Darkness swallowed the room. Teresa couldn't see, but she could feel the icy grip of her corpse pulling her closer. Her breath came in shallow gasps, every ounce of strength leaving her body. Suddenly, a dim red glow appeared coming from the dead version's eyes. The corpse snarled, "Give in. You don't belong to the living anymore." "No," Teresa cried, mustering every bit of willpower. She shoved against the corpse, but her hands sank into its flesh as if it were melting wax. The sensation was sickening. The ghost nurse's laughter echoed around them, bouncing off the walls like a chorus of demons. "Fight her, Teresa. If you lose, your soul is mine." Teresa screamed, and a surge of light burst from her chest. For a moment, the room lit up, revealing a horrifying scene. Her dead double clawing at her face, trying to crawl inside her body. She struggled, kicking and thrashing. But with each second, her corpse grew stronger, while she grew weaker. In that instant, Teresa realized this wasn't just a fight for her life. It was a fight for her soul. Teresa's lungs burned as she struggled against her dead double. The corpse's icy hands were already pressing against her chest, trying to force its way inside. From the shadows, the ghost nurse watched with a sinister smile. "Don't resist, Teresa. This is your fate." "No," Teresa shouted, her voice trembling yet fierce. She glared at the ghost nurse through the flickering darkness. "I won't let you control me. I won't become like you." The ghost nurse tilted her head, her hollow eyes gleaming. "You don't understand. I never left this place, and neither will you." Summoning every ounce of strength, Teresa screamed, "Then I'll drag you out with me." A blinding light erupted from within her, shaking the room violently. The bed rattled, windows cracked, and the corpse shrieked as its skin began to peel away in burning fragments. The ghost nurse hissed, covering her face, as though the light was tearing her apart. The air was filled with the sound of wailing souls. Teresa fell to her knees, gasping, but she had one thought. This was her only chance to end it all. The room trembled violently, as though the entire hospital were collapsing around Teresa. Dead double writhed in agony, its body splitting apart under the blinding light. The ghost nurse screamed, her figure flickering like a shadow in fire. "You cannot escape," the ghost nurse shrieked, her voice echoing like thunder. Teresa, barely able to stand, pressed her hands together and cried, "Leave me, leave this place forever." The light inside her surged one last time, exploding outward like a storm. The walls cracked, the windows shattered, and with a deafening roar the corpse disintegrated into ash. The ghost nurse reached toward Teresa, her face twisted in rage, before she too dissolved into smoke, vanishing into the darkness. Silence fell. Teresa collapsed to the floor, trembling, her heart racing. The room was empty now, no corpse, no nurse, no shadows, just her. Alive. When the hospital staff rushed in, they found her unconscious but breathing. Room 405 stood eerily quiet. From that day on, no one dared to use it again. Teresa resigned. The very next morning, she never wore her nurse's uniform again, but she carried the scars of that night forever.